This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. And welcome back to the Soar podcast. This is your host, Coach Jason Ballard, and it's great to be with you this week. Hope you had a great week last week. This week we've got some awesome things in store for you. We've got an outstanding guest that's going to talk about how turning business stress into your next level of greater success. Going to have fun unpacking that today. Today, we have the privilege of having James Grant on the show. Let me tell you a little bit about James Grant. James is a pretty amazing guy. He's an entrepreneur, he's a lawyer, and he's the co-founder of the Georgia Trial Attorneys, which is a large, thriving injury law firm based out of Atlanta, Georgia. Not only does he help people that are injured, people that have, had some bad things happen to them and help them heal, help them figure out next steps and ways to go, because that's confusing. There's you don't know what your rights are. You don't know who's right, who's wrong. That is a very confusing thing when you get injured in work, you get injured anywhere in a car wreck or whatever that may be. And so not only does he help people in times of need, usually and sometimes even very traumatic emotional events, but he's also helping other people grow their businesses. He's got an amazing story about how he started out in his business and how he's grown that to be one of the top injury law firms in the Southeast. So, without further ado, welcome to the show, James.
Thanks for having me. I like that introduction. I'm pretty pumped for it now.
Well, for a certain fee, I might be able to do some more introductions for you on other shows. I don't know. Maybe I can be your full-time intro guy or something, but
Hey,
you
there's
know,
always a price.
yeah, that's how entrepreneurs think, right, James? So you say, "Hey, I like that." I'm like, "Well, I can do that again, and you can pay me to do that." And you taking advantage of opportunities, right?
Absolutely. There's always an opportunity. There's never an obstacle.
Awesome. Well, so great to have you on the show. Thanks for your time today. James, for the audience, let's kind of kick this thing off, man. Talk to everybody about a little bit about you, your background, how you got started in law, why injury law, and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, I mean, so the first thing about me is I tell people the easy thing of, explain what you do because there's so many ways you can say it. And when it comes to lawyers, we can talk nonstop. So sometimes you have to shut us up. But the short and sweet version of what I do is I help other personal injury lawyers make more money faster and with less stress by serving as their outsourced litigation department. Um, a lot of people get that there's tons and tons of lawyers to choose from. I'm a big golfer. I could probably take a driver and hit anywhere from where I am right now and probably hit 17 other personal injury law firms. Like there's no shortage of buses,
Yeah.
billboards, TV, radio. I mean, they're everywhere. And a lot of those firms are really good at acquiring new clients and running them through the first phase of a personal injury case, which is called pre-litigation. But not every case settles. Most cases do settle without having to file a lawsuit and go through the court process. But some cases do, and not necessarily every law firm is built for that next stage, that second step, which is a big hurdle and a lot to do. And we found in our business model of instead of providing B2C or business to consumer services, we actually provide B2B services to other personal injury law firms and help them to litigate their cases that don't settle so that we can then work together of we just serve as their outsourced litigation department and they can go get more cases in that first stage and we can both grow together. And it's really been a good symbiotic relationship that we've really only found ourselves in the last year and a half, 2 years, and it's grown pretty successful so far.
Wow, that's pretty amazing business model. I don't know of too many people that do what you do. They usually kind of do their own thing themselves, right? And classic attorneys, way of doing things from my perspective of coaching and working with many attorneys in my business journey is that they like getting into the meat and the potatoes of all the litigation and the their points, our points, and where we're going to take advantage of our case and what we're going to do to put ourselves in advantage to win, and they get really into the meat and the potatoes of all of that stuff. And while that's great, they may be really great at researching and all those types of things, but they will work on a case and they will come to some conclusion on the case and look around and be like, oh, nobody's like in the office. Like the phone's not ringing. What we need to get some more clients, I guess. Now, how do we figure that out? And they go through this up and down cycle of getting some clients, losing some, or I don't say losing, but helping clients, and the clients go away to helping new clients, right? And so, I think your model is great for scaling for sure. So they can focus on maybe the pre-trial litigation stuff that they can negotiate themselves. Maybe they're really good at that, and then saving the trials for some bigger muscle like you guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the deals where there are other law firms that do what we do in the sense of there are other law firms that help other personal injury lawyers to litigate cases. This is not some new or novel business model.
Yeah,
However, when it comes to any kind of business that you're in, you can be in a have a very large or small market share, but you have to set aside what is your unique value proposition? What objectively are you going to offer to the consumer that differentiates you as opposed to the subjective feelings of, oh, we just give the best greatest service and our clients love us. That's only going to get you so far. So what we did is we made a commitment to all our partners that we aren't going to compete with them. We aren't going to be spending any dollars on digital, Facebook, Google, buses, billboards, TV, radio, any of that stuff to acquire clients that were recently in accidents. We only want to work with other law firms. So that way we're not competing with them. We're not using their money to effectively drive up their cost of acquisition. It's more of a complementary basis that we're working together. And that's
yeah.
where we've really been able to set ourselves apart and say, this is all we want to do. And we're going to do it really well. And we're going to all grow together.
No, I love it. As they say, the riches are in the niches, right? And not every just because you're a doctor and you go to school and learn how to be a doctor doesn't mean you're going to be a brain surgeon or orthopedic expert or an ear, nose, and throat expert, right? No, all attorneys are different. They can practice different. I know some attorneys that went to the same law schools. Some are estate planning attorneys, some are probate attorneys, some are injury attorneys, some are family oriented attorneys. Um, and they're not all equal. And depending on, who they are and their really true area of expertise per the talents that the good Lord gave them and somebody else, that's going to be different. Not all lawyers are the same. Some are better at going to trial than others. Some may be good at research and bringing people to the table to talk about the case and leverage who's got what to a particular negotiation or initial term of agreement or disagreement, but going to trial, that's a whole nother beast.
Well, yeah, I mean, and just kind of like you're alluding to is when you're running a business, you have to treat it like a business. It doesn't matter if you happen to be a professional. If you have a licensure, whether it's a law license or you're a CPA or you're a plumber, you can be really great at doing the craft of doing the thing that you went to school for, but that's not business. So you kind of have to make this decision on your entrepreneurial journey. Do you want to be somebody that has a business that operates outside of them, or do you want to have a hobby where everything is about you, where the law
Yep,
firm revolves around you? And if you want either of those things, you're going to have to operate and do things differently just because the results are going to be different as well.
that's right. Absolutely. Well, James, how did you get started in this? Did you grow up and you were like 13 years old and you're like, what a great day to be an injury attorney. I'm going to, help other bit like how did you get started? How did you know you were an entrepreneur? Why didn't you go to work for a big firm? Like help us understand your decision making process of where you got to?
I wish there was a decision-making process that went into where I got today. That is something that was definitely not present in my journey to where I've gotten so far. Because by all metrics, like I shouldn't be here. I didn't decide to go to law school until it was either 1 or 2 semesters before I was graduating from Georgia Tech with a civil engineering degree when I already had job offers lined up ready to go. Like I
My
literally
goodness.
just threw everything aside and said, you know what? I'm not going to do this. Let's try law school and see what happens, just because that should be fun, right? I mean, it made no sense. Like, because I literally, I had job offers, I had several lined up. I could have been a civil engineer, my PE, and gone that route and done something different.
Now,
But
what happened? Like you were going through school, you were on this, civil engineering path is, a very focused area of study. I mean, those folks do really well in the world. There's a big need for them. Like, what happened? Did you just not like it? Did you go intern somewhere and you're like, it's not what I thought it was? I mean, what turned you away from doing that after you spent so much time going down that path?
I mean, so it really only revolves around one class. I took one class and it was combining the National Environmental Policy Act and the engineering side of things. And I was just sitting there and I was just like looking at what we were doing every day. I was like, well, this law stuff's kind of cool. And I kind of like over here how there's, some synergy with the engineering side of things. Well, wouldn't it be a great idea if I did both of those? That would be a marketable
Mm,
thing, right? I mean, that was literally the extent of my thought process. It wasn't that I didn't like, I loved what I did. I love, civil engineering, and I was enjoying the places that I was interning at and that were offering me positions. But it was more of just like, huh, that's that's something new. That's cool. That's the new thing I can squirrel after, which, is fairly
yeah.
common with a lot of entrepreneurs that I ended up speaking with as well. Is we like to squirrel, we like the shiny new objects. So that's
Yeah.
sometimes great. Sometimes you have to step back and say, okay, is this something I'm actually going to go after right now?
Well, I think that's absolutely true. I think there's another dynamic there that you haven't mentioned yet, and that's kind of the broader DNA that God made you with, right? So being an engineer or being an attorney, those are kind of technical fields. You got to go to school for a long time to learn the ins and outs of that. It's very technical and detail oriented, but there's this other dynamic to you that's very strategic. It doesn't seem like you meet too many strangers. You talk to people, you think bigger than just because a lot of like engineers I've met, they have their office and they work on their projects and things. They're more introverts generally speaking. You are certainly an extrovert. So you're thinking differently, well beyond just the technical aspects. So you sitting in a cube, drawing lines and, engineering some plot of land somewhere and what's going to be built on it is probably not enough to feed you, I would imagine.
I mean, that's probably a good idea, as far as explaining is that what I was thinking in the moment. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to it. And at the end of the day, there are those that are very hard workers and they're great at doing their job. They just don't have the desire and or the risk tolerance to leverage that into a business. Everybody
Yeah.
has different skill sets, like you were talking about. Um, I do consider myself pretty risky, whether it comes to business, investments, any number of things. So I'm willing to take the risk. Obviously, with the risk, there's potential for a higher reward. Also, there's the potential for a large loss. So, a lot of it is built in, I think, to, like you said, kind of who you are and your willingness to step out and say, well, I'm going to be this lawyer that starts their own law firm, or I'm going to be an engineer that, starts their own engineering firm, or I'm just going to do really good work and have the security of knowing that I'm going to get things done on my time, but within someone else's business. It's,
Yeah.
it's all different and it's all subjective.
All right. So you go to law school, you graduate law school. Did you go into business for yourself? Did you join another law firm or did you join with some other folks in a partnership? How did you get started in your injury attorney practice?
So one of the things I saw is there's options to go, work for the big firms and, get a lot of small experience, so to speak. And
Right.
generally, the way it works is, especially with the big law firms, I'm not necessarily knocking their process. They have a very systematic approach to how they onboard new talent. But I didn't like the idea of working for somebody for 1, 2, 3 years, pushing a whole lot of paper and maybe touching a deposition once in that time period, just because you have to do
Mm.
a lot of work to work up to that. So I found another route of just becoming a prosecutor for a year and a half. That was a great opportunity for me. Where if these whether it's a district attorney or solicitor general, you got a lot of cases that you're handling. You're going to have a lot of trial experience. I think I had like 20 something trials in 18 months. I mean,
Oh,
I've tried more cases that some lawyers tried in their entire career in the first 18 months of my legal career. And that really just gave me a wealth of experience of being able to, command a courtroom and also understand how this process works, and then leverage that into working for a smaller firm that did a little bit of everything, where I then met my business partner and he and I kind of figured out a plan to do this ourselves.
yeah. All right. So you're in a partnership now with one other person, or do you have a bigger group now?
Well, yeah. So we have a bigger group now. I think we have 22 that we currently have, as far as lawyers, paralegals, staff members, administrators. We have a large virtual staff as well. We employ people all across the world, just because, COVID was a wonderful thing in the fact that it opened up the doors, technologically speaking, to a lot of opportunities. So that's been something we've been able to leverage a lot of. And then understanding that as you grow and as you scale a business, you can't be doing everything. You have to be able to delegate, or else you are going to become the bottleneck. And then, as we were talking earlier, you can't scale when there's a large bottleneck on one person. You have to be able to
Yeah.
delegate, you have to be able to build.
So what was that moment in time? So you started this practice, you had a partner, you kind of grew that out over time and built, brought some more people into the company. At what moment in time did you think to yourself, okay, I got to make some changes? Am I going to be the lawyer? Am I going to be the business guy? Am I going to be the face of the company? Am I going to be, the masterful guy in the courtroom, making everybody's eyes water of my performance and winning cases? Like, at what point did you feel like you may need to make that decision? What happened to help you think, oh wow, I really need to probably be the business guy going forward?
It wasn't necessarily one event, but a series of events that led us to a place where we were able to have the entrepreneurial maturity to make the decisions that we needed to make. And I'll explain that further because that's super vague. But we started the business in 2015. And I mean, kind of like a lot of, service industry individuals, where you have a licensure of some sort that allows you to do the thing, you get focused on doing the thing. You don't necessarily have a business plan. You just say that we're going to do great legal work and it's all going to work out. Well, I mean, it did for the first 3 years. I mean, I think we averaged somewhere between 30 and 35% growth for the first 3 years, which is pretty good. Like, no one's
Yeah.
complaining about a growing business. But as you grow and you don't have a plan, you don't have processes and procedures and SKUs and workflows and templates and all this stuff, it can become a dumpster fire because you're just hopping from one problem to the next. There's no systemic anything within your company. It's really just a hobby between you and whoever you're working with. So about October of 2018, we kind of sat back and just kind of looked at each other and we're like, we didn't start a business to do this. Like, you don't start a business to effectively become an indentured servant. Like, you aren't employed to your business. Your business isn't your life. You started this business to provide a lifestyle for you and your family and to hopefully help a lot of other people. That's generally the ideal, but a lot of times we fall into this place where that's not happening. So something has to change. Some dynamic has to be different. And we sat back and we're like, okay, well, something has to change. We don't know what needs to change. We're obviously not smart enough to make that decision. And that's when we reached out and we found a business coach, which was the single most transformative thing that has happened so far in our entrepreneurial journey to get us to the place where we were able to accept coaching understand what business actually is and how a business plan and business planning and strategy can really send you to the next level to then explode your business on a scale that you really didn't think was possible. So that's, where a lot of little things led up to decisions to bring on consultants and just people that are better and smarter and advisors to help you see the forest for the trees and sometimes the trees for the forest.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. You know, you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with, right? And one of the things you said is kind of a crossroads where I see this trend on a regular basis. Do you own your business or does your business own you? And when people take a cold hard look in the mirror and they really study that question and they're really truly honest with themselves, a lot of people, I'd say probably 60 to 70% of people out there in the business world, there's a point where they're like, oh my gosh, this is starting to own me. It's starting to drive my schedule. It's starting to drive my time in ways where I don't want to be spending this much time doing these things. And I'm missing out on opportunities over here with my family or my, other areas of the business that are being neglected or whatever that may be, right? The business owns them to where the business isn't driving things for them to allow them to live the ideal life they want to live. The business is owning them. It's kind of like, you got a tiger by the tail and the tail is wagging the tiger. The tail is whipping you around like nobody's business and you're getting beat to death. And there's a point you're like, I have to change or I'm going to get beat to death in the next week or two. Like I can't take this anymore, And so thank you for sharing that, James. I think that's very powerful. I think a lot of people will resonate with that for sure. So tell me, at what point did you or did you do it from the beginning? Did you just say, instead of competing with everybody in the red ocean, we're going to kind of venture off and create our own blue ocean over here. We're going to define a different way forward in the legal arena. We're going to, maybe partner and do things differently instead of being a threat to somebody of in the legal industry. We're going to partner and we're going to help each other be successful in doing outsourcing. When did that happen in your journey?
I wish I could take credit for that as well. Like I wish I was, the legal and business genius that was like, this wonderful idea is something that someone needs to leverage and we're the people to do it. But unfortunately, neither my business partner or I saw that opportunity. It was through the help of our business coach. We actually had a VIP day with the owner of the business coaching organization that we're a part of. And really after a couple hours, he was like, so let me get this straight. You guys have been doing referral work, is what we call it. You've been doing
Yep.
that for years. You've got good processes, people, procedures, metrics, financial controls, systems, sales, marketing. Like you have all this great stuff over here, but you want to leave it to start a new division and focus on pre litigation where you don't necessarily have all those things, but the margins are a lot better and you think it's going to work. And I was like, well, when you say it like that, it sounds kind of dumb. And he was like, because it is 100%. You should not do that at all. And then we just kind of sat back. We're like, well, that's what everybody does. Like everybody does this. Like this is the path that most injury lawyers follow. And then he just had us sit back and kind of realize is, well, what if you just got rid of the first part? What if you got rid of that pre-litigation marketing and sales and production? And we were like, no one does that. And that's when he got us thinking, oh, no one does this. So that's an opportunity for us to effectively have all of the market share because no one else is willing to make that commitment. And we did that about 2 years ago, and it's just been awesome ever since.
Wow. So you define your blue ocean. The red ocean for folks that may not understand these terms. The red ocean, it's a very competitive ocean. It's red, it's congested, it's competitive, it's where everybody is, and you're fighting for every little breadcrumb and opportunity. And it's just, a lot of work to get a little bit of meat to chew on, and then you got to go out there and fight like hell to get your next, client again, right? Whereas the blue ocean is you're getting out of the competitive space and you're defining what the future is going to be. You're not going to fight with everybody. You're going to do what James did and do something completely different than what everybody else is doing, but do it in a way that makes it very enticing and lucrative for people to connect with you and allow yourself to niche down and be the best at what you can be. One of the worst mistakes you can make as a business owner, business leader is trying to do too many things in the realm of your business, right? Where outsourcing really truly is your ability to scale. That means you have to let go of some control. You have to let go of your ego. You have to let go of some things in order to take on some things differently, right? If the cup is always full of you and all the things you're doing, then there's no room in the cup for you to put anything else to drink to help you grow and learn, so you've got to empty out some of that stuff and hand it to somebody else that's probably a lot better, that's very much an expert in it, to give yourself the ability to be more of an expert in that space. Is that how you see that, James? That's how I see it from a coaching perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the only caveat I will give is something that I didn't realize as well is we're not talking about blindly outsourcing or blindly
Right.
delegating. You have to do it within the confines of a plan with objective metrics for success. So whatever the position, whatever the thing that you are struggling with or that's bogging your time down, break it down and into an objective metric and then deliver that metric to the vendor, to the employee, to the contractor, to whoever, and say, all right, every week you need to deliver X number of these things, X number of widgets, X number of demands, X number of phone calls, however you are quantifying it, and you're giving them the metrics for success. It's probably not just one, there's probably three or four, but say, this is the way I measure whether you are successful in this position. And then they know, we all can track it the same way. And so it then builds that consistency amongst different team members and where you're going. So that way you can get things done and offload more and more and more and more and more so that you're doing only the high level CEO functions or the things that you just want to do.
Yeah. No, that's critically important. James, as an entrepreneur, if you've grown in this business, there's been probably a lot of twists and turns to your journey, like with most people. Give the audience a little bit of insight to maybe one or two mistakes you made along the way that you would like to pass on to others that may allow them the opportunity to not make some of the mistakes.
Yeah, I mean the two that come right off the top both deal with hiring.
Hmm.
The old adage of cheap is expensive could not be more true. When it comes to hiring, so many times we just get so focused on the number of I've got to come up with this giant number for salary, and let's say it's $100,000 a year salary. Well, by the time you add in the health insurance, 401k, and all the other benefits, you're at $120,000, and well, I don't have $120,000 in my bank account to pay this person. So many times as business owners, we think about that and we think about having this pot of money sitting there, but then we have to set back. Do we pay anybody a year up front? Like, do you pay people a year in advance for the work that they're going to do?
Right.
No. You pay them to produce on a daily and weekly basis. So if you're only going to onboard them and you're hiring a professional, you're not hiring an amateur. So onboarding for a professional in any position, 3 to 4 weeks max, absolute max. So by that third or fourth week, they should be producing at a 3 to 4x multiplier of their salary minimum. And if they're doing that, then you're only out for 1 month's salary. Every business owner has 1 month's salary almost for any position that they need.
Yep.
So what's the risk then? if you pay somebody for a month and they don't work out, well, guess what? You learned a whole lot about the next one, and then when you bring that person in, they're going to produce. And by the time they're producing for that first month, they've paid for them, they've paid for last month, and next month they're going to be making money for you. So when it comes to hiring, don't hire cheap. Hire professionals, pay them well, and build in their system or their financial portfolio of how you're going to pay them metrics. Give them, this is what you need to deliver on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, however you're going to review them basis, so that way everyone knows what the objective is. And then when it comes to doing that, the second mistake that we learned, once you train them and teach them one thing, make sure to follow up to make sure they're still doing it 3, 6, 12, 18, 24 months down the line. That's one of the hard lessons that we've learned is if you don't retrain, you're going to into problems because people are going to go rogue and they're going to say, well, this is the way I like to do it. And I'm going to follow my pattern of my plan and my procedure, which could be entirely outside of the plan that you have, especially if you're scaling. You may be doing things a certain way because this problem with scale is going to come. But if you're not constantly retraining on how things are working and how things should be done, that can really cause a lot of problems down the line as well.
Yeah. Well, those are really, really great. I see these quite often in a lot of different businesses, not just the legal side of it, where, you know, everybody's trying to cut cost, everything's kind of lean in this environment, everybody's kind of waiting on the economy to bounce back, everybody's waiting on the next political leader to take over, everybody's waiting on something, right? And sometimes it feels like even though I don't think the economy's, at a standstill, it feels like things are kind of sluggish. And so people are less um, risky. And so I see this all the time. Yeah, let's go get in your example of $100,000 employee plus benefits is 120,000 fully loaded. Though, well, let's see if we can get somebody at like 70, 60 or 70, and then we'll train them. And we just need a really good person that understands the basics, and then we'll train them, and everything's great. And we'll just build into them, and they're going to love it here because we're training them. And what do you think happens?
Either they're going to leave or you're going to spend 6 months training them, and then you've even spent more money than hiring the professional from the start.
Yes. Or you bring them on board and you never train them. And they have to fumble and stumble along trying to figure it out. There's no best practices there. There's nobody training and mentoring them. They're just kind of going with the herd of people around them, trying to stay out of trouble, trying to please the boss. And it's a very reactive, and they never progress. There's never a development plan. And 4 years down the road, they're not much farther in their maturity in your company than they were when they've started. Boy, I have seen that many, many times. Don't hire cheap people and promise to develop them because you won't. It'll never go like you think it will. I ran into this issue about a year and a half ago with a company, manufacturing company, and they kept hiring cheap people, very inexperienced people, very young, junior level people. And they were wondering why they weren't growing. We've been in business 15 years and they haven't really grown. They had a total of 15 people in their organization in 15 years. They started with like 4 or 5, right? So they really haven't grown. And when I went in there, one of the first things I did, James, is I did an assessment of their entire company. I looked at their marketing, their sales, leadership, strategy, goals, customer service, HR, operations, blah, blah, blah. And then I provided them a report, had all their key people in the room, and did an out brief. And they looked at me like I was from another planet. That's the first time I realized this was going on. I'm like, it's been that way for years. Like, how do you not know this? And when I painted that picture, the owner was speechless. I'm like, so let me get this straight. You hired this guy a year ago who's junior and inexperienced that doesn't really know how to do this, and you spent somebody spent 2 or 3 hours with them, and that's all they got, and that's all they know, and they rinse and repeat that in their 9 to 5 gig, where's all the training coming from? And the owner himself says, no, I'm the one that trains them. I know the most about the business. I was like, okay, great. How much training have you allocated to this? Because the owner was in his mid 60s, had other little side hustle businesses he was doing too, and only spent 2 days a week in the business. And it was really just going over projects and money and just kind of keeping the lights on kind of mentality. There was no development. There was no maturity. I'm like, well, you can't scale. You can't scale. Powerful lesson. So, James, let's fast forward. How would you describe your competitive advantage in your company? How did you create this blue ocean? And what are some of the big takeaways you've gotten from it now that you've done this for a while?
I mean, you've said a lot of it already, but it really comes down to the old adage of, you can dabble in everything, but you'll be a master of nothing.
Yeah.
And so many times, especially when we start a business, of you see an opportunity. Oh, well, I really don't do that, but I need money to pay rent this month, so I'm going to take this thing that's a stretch that maybe is not really in my firm's wheelhouse, or my business is this isn't our go to product, but we'll kind of make it work. And once you start that, you start doing it over and over and over again, because you're chasing the new fancy shiny object of saying, well, I'm going to do this thing here and this thing here and this thing here. Next thing you know, you have 5 or 6 different SKUs and practice areas, and you're divided all over the place. Focus on, number one, focus on what you want your avatar to be. What do you want your you know grade A client? Who are they? What do they look like? Where do they live? Where do they shop? Where do they spend time? What do they do? Like, breaking all of that down, and then say, all right, how am I going to serve this person? How am I going to acquire them? And building your business out from that, as opposed to just chasing everything and figuring out what your niche is. So that way you can, again, have that competitive advantage to objectively differentiate yourself. If it's all subjectives, then there's nothing that, there's nothing separating you from anybody else. You have to have something that is objective that you can point to and say, this is what I offer that everyone else doesn't.
That's awesome. So, James, we started off the conversation talking about stress and converting that into success. And so you provide a lot of great insight on your entrepreneurial journey, how you're doing things in your practice, how you're different. So if you're another attorney listening to this, a lot of great takeaways. If you are in another business sector or business industry, again, a lot of really great takeaways. As we kind of uh, are concluding today's podcast, James, what are the top 3 things that you would recommend to anybody in business, whether it's in legal or any other business outside of legal, that would help them reduce their stress, eliminate that stress, and start leveraging the things that are stressing them into being more successful?
First thing that I would recommend is actually nothing to do with business on its face. But the first thing I recommend to anybody that especially is going on the entrepreneurial journey and maybe starting off in a small business is, you have to take care of yourself. You have to make your physical fitness and health an absolute priority in your life. And it transcends in so many different ways, when we could probably do a whole podcast on that one thing. But when you think about so many business owners, especially when you're starting out, you're the one that's making sales calls, you're having sales conversations. And a lot of this is face to face and relationship building. And when you meet a person for the first time and you can immediately tell that they're physically fit, that tells you a lot about that person. That
Hmm.
tells you that they have drive, that they understand the doctrine of self sacrifice and delayed gratification, and they can deliver and achieve things that most can't. And so when you set that as the foundation just for your life, it transcends into your business and gives you the ability to, number one, think clearly, have the ability to de-stress outside of work because, again, physical fitness in my instance, I'm an amateur strongman competitor. I love lifting very heavy things that most people think are ridiculous, but it's what I enjoy. But it also provides that endorphin release as well, and also you have to make sure that you take care of your body so that you can and live in your business to then live the life that you want it to be able to provide. I think that's the first most important thing any business owner can do. Next thing is have a plan. Actually have a plan for your business that operates on a 12-month and a 3-year basis. And when you do this, review and update it every quarter because things change. COVID changed a lot of things for a lot of people. If you stayed on that same business plan, you probably weren't going to be able to achieve it if you're doing everything the same. So by having a plan, building in those metrics, and then measuring them regularly, quarterly at a minimum, but you're going to be able to see things coming down the pipe. You're going to see those issues before they arrive, and you're going to be able to adapt, adjust, and overcome.
Awesome. I love it. Take care of yourself first. Boy, and that's mentally, spiritually, physically. I mean, it's all of those things because at the end of the day, if your goal is to add value to the world, make the world a better place, serve people in bigger, better ways, whatever your kind of mission or vision is in life, personally, that's driving you in whatever business sector you may be in, you can only give what you have to give. And if you're run down, tired, worn out, not thinking clearly, you're super busy, never have enough time to, talk to people that are important to you. Like you can't give your best if you don't have your best to give. And so taking care of yourself is crucial and obviously a plan. James, that is excellent advice. I think everybody, if they just did those two things, I would think this world that we live in today would be a whole lot better off. So thank you for your time today, James. You've been awesome. It's always great to have entrepreneurs on the call and engaging these kind of conversations. I feel like we just kind of got started. We may need to follow back up with you and have another episode on any one of these topics. I think we can have a lot of fun with that. So thank you for that. James, how do people contact you, man? From an entrepreneur perspective, a legal perspective, if people want to reach out, connect with you in any way, shape, or form, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, so the best way to get in touch with us, it's the same for either method, whether you want to get in touch with us via phone or whether you want to get in touch with us through our website. It's the same URL. It's 833, the number 4, the win. So that's our phone number, 833 for the win or 833 for the win.com. You can call us, you can go to our website. If you're a lawyer and you want to schedule a free strategy session with me to see how we can take your business to the next level and help you reach the goals that you want to reach in your life, feel free to do that. And especially if you're a local attorney in the Atlanta metro area, let me know. I'll take you out to lunch. We'll get to know each other and we'll see what we can do.
Awesome. Feel free to reach out to James. What a terrific guy, doing some amazing things out there. Not only lifting really heavy things and becoming a behemoth of a strong man, but just helping people that are injured, helping other businesses help more people, which I think is his real true purpose in life. And so that's it for today's show. Tune in next week as we talk about some other great topics as we get into the holiday season to help you end the year as best as you possibly can. You got a great week. Look forward to talking with you next week.